Hello, Jim. What an exciting position group to review right off the bat. The White Sox infield.
I think you can say that about every position group. You can say, what an exciting position group, the relievers.
I should, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, Patrick already posted his grades for the position players at Sox Machine, and most of it's bad. Like, it's hard to be excited about anybody who isn't Luis Robert Jr., but we will try. And even if we can't be excited, we'll at least provide some exciting cynicism, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll do our best. We're going to do our best. But when it comes to the White Sox infield, and again, we've been hyping this up because this is the biggest decision for Chris Getz when it comes to the roster. It's going to be Tim Anderson and how we start this episode off, especially at the shortstop position. Now, we're recording this after the first game of the division series, both in the American and National Leagues. And I don't think it's crazy to say this. Everybody knows this that's ever been watching baseball for however long. Even if you're new to the sport and you hopped on with the White Sox bandwagon because you just started following baseball, what a terrible team to hop on. But we are happy that you're here. And for those that have been watching the White Sox for 50 plus years, everybody knows, Jim, the shortstop position is critical. And it is obvious in the postseason as well that the shortstop position is huge for teams.
There are some good ones.
Yes, very good ones. Tim Anderson this past year had his worst season as a professional. On Fangraphs, Tim Anderson was worth negative half a win. On Baseball Reference really did not like Tim Anderson at all. Their WAR had Anderson at -2 wins below replacement. That is really ugly. And what's the weird thing is that Anderson, despite the knee injury early in the season when Hanser Alberto fell into him, Anderson did play 123 games, which is the same amount of games that he played in 2021. So just 2 seasons ago. 2 seasons ago in 123 games during 2021, Anderson had an 806 OPS. He batted 309. He had 17 homers and 29 doubles and 2 triples. So that's 48 extra base hits. And on Baseball Reference, he was worth 4.7 WAR. He was a top 10 shortstop in Major League Baseball. 2 years later, same amount of games, 1 home run because he has a 582 OPS. He only has 21 extra base hits, so not even half what he had a couple years ago. And he was worth -2 wins above replacement. So that's a -6.7 WAR difference from just 2 years ago, Jim. That's how drastic of a drop-off it's been for Tim Anderson. And the most pressing, again, why he's the most pressing decision is because his contract, it's either a $14 million club option or $1 million buyout. And I know we've had this discussion before, Jim, but what's in your mind here as far as step one with Tim Anderson? Are you picking up this option or are you declining it and making him a free agent?
I think ultimately, when it comes down to Tim Anderson's, the decision around him is, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, and I think my mind's still the same, is that I see him as like a decent fit for this bridge team if the White Sox aren't completely tearing it down and they don't really have anybody internal to replace him at shortstop. It's probably worth bringing him back. Like, I guess ultimately I'm indifferent. Like, and that's what's sad about this is that, like, if the White Sox announce they're picking it up, that'll be mildly annoying because, like, it'll be a case of, like, what's the upside? What is he good at? I can't really answer that. There isn't really an answer when he's not hitting for any power and his defense is mediocre at best. When you think about the future of seeing the press release of White Sox decline option on Tim Anderson, like, I would be mildly annoyed that that's how it ends. That's when you look at all of these contracts the White Sox signed, there might not be, I guess Luis Robert would be the one whose team options actually are picked up. Otherwise, you're waiting for the clock to run out on Eloy Jimenez. You're waiting for the clock to run out on Yoan Moncada, assuming that, he's not going to have a clean bill of health up until that decision point. So, like, that's also annoying that, they weren't able to cash in on what seemed like a no-brainer extension at the time. So, like, that's kind of where I'm at. And, like, he was so dismal last year that, like, I can understand not wanting to throw $14 million at him. You just look at the offseason market And I guess I'm conditioned to the White Sox not having real creative ideas to solve problems. So I see like Anderson coming back as like, yeah, I guess it's better than what's out there and what's like who the White Sox might get without winning an all-out bidding war. But if Chris gets, him being not a new guy in town, but a new guy in his role, and maybe he really does have some different ideas, giving him like slight benefit of the doubt. If the White Sox decline that team option, I'm open to saying, okay, Chris Getz, what do you have?
Right.
What's your big idea? What are your options in case that big idea falls through? Like, I'm okay watching him try to solve a problem. So ultimately I'm indifferent, which is a shame because I think Tim Anderson, given the highs and lows and how polarizing his style is when he's on, like probably the worst thing you can say about him is that you really don't care about him, or like that's not really how he's designed to play. So like that's ultimately an insult enough, is that like he just doesn't make you feel anything.
Yeah, I kind of feel like an idiot because what was it, 7-8 months ago, I was advocating for the White Sox to sign Tim Anderson to a long-term contract extension. And cap tip to you, you were hesitant on that, Jim. Not that you hated Tim Anderson, but you wanted to see if he could actually play a full season. And he did play more than 120 games. We don't know as far as the extent of just how banged up he was in the 2023 season, but he did play more than 120 games. But man, if you gave him that type of contract that I was advocating for prior to the season, not only would I look foolish, but Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams would look more foolish than they do, and they're unemployed. So
they'd have gotten fired faster. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. Because right now Javier Baez has got an option, right? He can decide to opt out, or he could stay within his 4-year, $98 million that's left in his contract. He'd be an idiot if he opted out. Like no one would come anywhere close to the money that he is currently getting paid by Detroit. So I don't think Javier Baez is going to opt out. What's funny is if you decide in your offseason plan project to not bring Tim Anderson back and you buy him out, the best free agent available for shortstops is already part of the White Sox organization. That's Elvis Andrews. Out of the available shortstops, here's this list. Ahmed Rosario, who played for the Guardians and Dodgers this year, was worth 0.2 WAR during the regular season. His fielding run value was minus 10 runs below league average. He is one of the worst defensive shortstops in baseball, and it wasn't much better in 2022. Paul DeYoung, he's 30 years old. He played over 100 games this year. His fielding run value 7, but his weighted runs created plus was 66, so his WAR was 0.3. Nick Ahmed, who played 72 games, but quickly got replaced within the Diamondbacks, and his weighted runs created plus was 51. He was good on the glove, though. He had a 5 runs above average when it comes to fielding run value, so, defensively he's okay. But then here's Elvis Andrews, the only free agent shortstop with a WAR total above 1 at 1.1. He had an 81 weighted runs created plus, and his fielding run value was 4. He's 35 years old coming into this next season, folks. And he is the best available shortstop in free agency. So that's really the choice here. If you opt out of Tim Anderson's contract, Jim, 1, do you think about bringing Elvis Andrews back? Or 2, do you have to explore some type of trade to find another shortstop? I think that's the debate here after the question, if you bring Tim Anderson back or not. And if you decide to not bring back Tim Anderson, playing down this thought process, do you bring back Andrews or you explore a trade?
Well, does Elvis Andrews want to come back? Would be another question, because like he was traded to the White Sox. He re-signed with the White Sox in February when like it was his best option for playing time, and also one that was at least what was thought to be a contender. So in terms of somebody wanting to get to the postseason and want to maybe play for a World Series at some point in his career, 15 years in, that, I think that he might have a more jaded view of the White Sox are. And given his positioning, like a lot of teams might see him as like a good bridge guy, as like, let's have him around for 1 year, try to get by. Like, I think I would like to see him back on the White Sox if they decide to not go with Tim Anderson, just because like you did see some of the leadership aspects. You did see some of him like being an on-field leader, like trying to instruct people where to stand, where to go with the ball. That's one of the reasons why I don't know if he'd want to come back, is like he's not getting paid to coach as well as be a player. Like obviously it's part of a shortstop's responsibilities, but it seemed like he was having to do that a little bit too much. And he just might want something that's a little less maintenance for being a, either a fill-in shortstop or like a fifth infielder, that sort of thing. So I'm skeptical he'd want to come back. It seems like he's served his time with the White Sox and he might want to try to pursue more enjoyable jobs elsewhere. But like, it is a decent option to where like, if the White Sox aren't contending and you just want to find somebody who can bridge a gap between like Tim Anderson, Colson Montgomery, or Jose Rodriguez, whoever might be the most reliable, feasible shortstop at the end of next year. Not bad, like not exciting, but nothing about the 2024 White Sox I think is going to be exciting. It's going to be mostly about like whether the holdovers are going to be more productive than they were last year.
Is Tim Anderson a lost cause? If you do bring him back, what's your confidence level that he could bounce back, Jim? Maybe not to the level of 2021, but it's got to be better than this for his sake, because if he does not bounce back in 2024, like the White Sox pick up his option and he's still replacement level, is he done at age 32? Like, I don't know what options he's going to have available in free agency if he duplicates another season like this.
Yeah, I mean, like the tough thing about looking at Anderson is like, when you look at that 2 wins below replacement figure from Baseball Reference, that's based on defensive runs saved. He was negative 16 defensive runs saved, whereas like outs above average, he was 1 run in the red. So like there is a discrepancy between like how the metrics are handling him. I think I'm inclined to split the difference between the two and just say like, he's not somebody who's going to bolster his value with his defense. Like his value is being somebody who's bat first and can handle shortstop, but he's not somebody, if his glove needs to carry him, his glove is going to do that. So that's why like ultimately, whether it's -1 or -16, you end up in the same, I guess the argument ends up in the same spot where it's all about how's he hitting. And the thing is, like, there are some injuries you can point to, like the groin injury from 2 years ago, and then the knee injury that he had, and the White Sox having to grunt through injuries because they just had precious little depth, and the minor leaguers they bring in just never hit the ground running. So like Lenin Sosa isn't going to pick him up. Romy Gonzalez isn't going to pick him up. Jose Rodriguez, where he did not have the hamate injury that ended his 2022, probably can't be counted upon to pick him up. So if he's grunting through something, then maybe there's a reason why he was this bad. But I think when you look at Anderson, his style of play, how few walks he draws, how he has to get by being like a medium contact guy. Like we had these similar discussions about Josh Harrison when the White Sox brought him up, and looking his ups and downs between when he was with the A's and the Pirates and the Tigers and the Nationals, like and the wild swings and the terrible year he had with Detroit in his previous full season in the American League, and just realizing like those are the oscillations that a player is subject to when he just makes contact that isn't elite in terms of exit velocity and launch angle optimized for power. And it's more about like, can he find gaps and can he leg out infield singles? And, Harrison was a year-to-year guy. Like by the time he was in his early 30s, hitting 33, 34, like he's very much a 1-year contract. Maybe there's some upside. Maybe you can get him when he's when fortune's smiling upon him, and you'll get like a 2.5 win season because he plays good defense. But if he's not BABIPing well and he's hitting in the low 200s and his OBP is really not spending much time in the 3s, then you're getting a guy who's basically like 1 win at best. And you're wondering like, well, we might have one of those guys at home. So it's sad if it gets to that point, but like Harrison had some really good years, not as good as Anderson's run, but like ultimately, like he was able to max out that skill set with some peak athleticism in his 20s and make an all-star game and have some really valuable years that were worth an extension. So that's why I think Anderson, like, even though it might be surprising that he lost it this quickly, it's not entirely unfathomable. And he's already done the driveline thing. And that's one thing that's frustrating about the White Sox is like their driveline stories are Tim Anderson and Carson Fulmer, who just like didn't do anything. Yeah, yeah. Didn't work. And like, you know, you see all these other guys who went to driveline or did swing coach things. And
like
just,
JD Martinez this past off season and resurrected his career.
Yeah. And just ultimately like the White Sox have guys who just, you know, continue to find new lows. And that's why like he's already done that. So if he continues to go that path, like there's no reason for optimism there. You know, he had 21 extra base hits. He had 15 double plays. That's something like I can't quite, you know, where's the upside there? And it's hard to figure it out. And then if he gets hurt again, you're back to square one. So like, I'm inclined to think of him as a year-to-year guy, like might be handsomely paid sometimes. You know, might be a, you know, year in a club option, might be year in a player option. If he was able to cash in on some of the bad luck he had before, but I can see it being something that just dried up on him. And now he has to get by like on swings of fortune that just, it's really hard to do.
I think I'm in the boat, Jim, of declining the $1 million option, taking that $13 million, seeing if I can entice Elvis Andrews on like $5 million, which is a pay raise from this previous season, to be the starting shortstop. And he would be the starting shortstop on opening day.
And see, we'll look to trade you.
Yeah,
to a contender.
If you're not good and it's time for Colson Montgomery, we'll be able to move you, before the deadline or try to. And then on February 1st, if Tim Anderson's still a free agent, then I would call and be like, you want $7 million and be our starting second baseman. And if he accepted that, it would be a starting gig. And there, as far as with the math, $1 million buyout plus $7 million to Tim Anderson to be second base, $5 million to Elvis Andrews. It just saved $1 million. And now you got Andrews and Anderson again up the middle, just like this previous season, which isn't all that great, but they have flipped positions. Andrews is now shortstop and Anderson's at second base. And if you don't sign Anderson at second base, we'll get to second base later in this episode, or he decides to sign elsewhere, then there's a lot of great memories of Tim Anderson with the White Sox. It's just more times than not, you don't get the opportunity to finish things on a good note, especially when it comes to professional sports. Not everybody gets to have the Miguel Cabrera retirement tour. Paul Konerko had something similar, but man, Konerko was awful that season. And sometimes it just crashes and burns like this, like with Tim Anderson, just out of the blue. Like, why is he all of a sudden one of the worst, if not the worst shortstop in Major League Baseball? But to pick up the $14 million and then your plan A is to move him over to second base, I don't know if that's such a great plan A, Jim. So that's why I'm in the boat of buying him out. See what the other 29 teams in baseball think of Tim Anderson. And if he's still a free agent come February 1st, then talk to him again and see if he is interested in playing second base and go in that direction. But I think, again, the shortstop market is so bad. This is an area where if you're doing the offseason plan projects, I cannot wait to see the creativity of the trades that people come up with, Jim. Because I think if you're really trying to vastly improve this position, that's your most realistic route, is trading for shortstop. Because the other option, like my plan, would be bring back Elvis Andrews until Colson Montgomery is ready. And that's so much pressure on the rookie to perform if you are contending. And that's a big if.
Yeah, I think I'd be fine if the White Sox let Tim Anderson go, and then you just have to hope that Chris Getz is willing to make a trade or can figure out how to close deals in a way that Rick Hahn stopped being able to. And that's the benefit of doubt. Maybe that's one thing he whispered into Jerry Reinsdorf's ear, said like, Rick, this is the scenario where Chris Getz overthrows Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn, but he's just saying, look at this payroll, $190 million. And like, this is what it got you. Like, if Rick had the ability to make trades, you wouldn't have to spend $190 million. You'd be able to solve holes with players rather than money, and use the money for somebody better than Andrew Benintendi. So like, that's what I'm hoping he's saying, and hoping he has the appetite and ability to do, but he's completely untested. So like, there's no reason to believe that he can do meaningfully better, but it is worth, like, because we have no choice. We are a captive audience in this regard, unless you just decide to up and leave the White Sox entirely. Just saying, like, let's see what he does. We have no patterns to go off of as Chris Getz as a decision maker. So may as well wait for patterns to emerge, chart what he's doing. And then by next winter, maybe we'll have a better idea of like, well, Chris Getz will probably do this the way Rick Hahn will probably jump the market for somebody who isn't that good.